Today's main character is Liang Huimin, born in 1971 in Singapore. Since childhood, she has been intelligent, cute, and loved by her family and friends. At the age of 15, during a stroll at a church, Liang Huimin met Lui Weitian, a man 4 years older than her. From there, the two gradually became close, developed feelings for each other, and eventually married in 1995. After becoming his wife, Liang Huimin not only took good care of her family, but also excelled in her banking career. On April 13, 1997, their daughter was born, marking the beginning of an irrevocable tragedy for their family. Lui Weitian, Liang Huimin's husband, seemed to be a talented and decent man, but in reality, he was the complete opposite. Although Lui Weitian was always passionate about creativity and confident that he could achieve great things, the results did not meet his expectations. He repeatedly faced failures, one after another. These failures not only wiped out the family's assets, but also plunged them deep into debt. Initially, Liang Huimin gave up her stable banking job to support her husband's passion, but as the situation worsened, she had to leverage her connections to return to work and face the harsh reality that life goes on and debts still need to be paid. The unsuccessful career did not make Lui Weitian wake up. He continued to have affairs everywhere. First, he had an affair with a woman named Ho Wei Lin. Not only did the two secretly meet outside, but Ho Wei Lin even openly lived with Lui Weitian under the guise of being business partners. With both his wife and mistress living under one roof, Lui Weitian skillfully managed between the two women. Not long after, he got involved in another relationship with Tan Su Fen, a new partner. However, their business also fell apart, and their relationship quickly ended. Even though Lui Weitian skillfully hid everything, Liang Huimin eventually discovered her husband's infidelity. Unable to endure it any longer, in October 1999, Liang Huimin decided to take her daughter back to her parents' home. In 2000, Lui Weitian faced yet another business failure. Desperate and hopeless, he decided to commit suicide by taking a large dose of sleeping pills, but he survived after being rescued. Upon hearing the news, Liang Huimin went to the hospital to take care of him for a while. After this incident, Liang Huimin no longer had any hope for this marriage. To protect her daughter's future and her own, in February 2001, Liang Huimin officially filed for divorce and was determined to gain custody of her child. Naturally, Lui Weitian strongly opposed it, continuously finding every reason to delay the process, causing the relationship between the two to become extremely tense. Liang Huimin also felt very troubled as her husband kept dragging on without agreeing to the divorce. It wasn't until May 2001 that Lui Weitian seemed to relent. On the night of May 14th at 11 p.m., Lui Weitian unexpectedly appeared at her apartment at 923 Hugang Street. He suggested meeting her to sign an agreement regarding asset division as part of the divorce process. Huimin lived on the 4th floor, and Lui Weitian arranged to meet her at the small courtyard on the 1st floor. When she brought her daughter down to sign, she realized that Lui Weitian had forgotten to bring a pen. At this point, Lui Weitian suggested she go upstairs to get a pen while he held their daughter and went upstairs to play. Without much thought, Huimin turned back to get the pen. When the elevator reached the 4th floor, a man wearing a helmet suddenly rushed out from the stairs with a sharp, long knife in hand. Without a chance to react, Huimin was attacked from behind, the blade stabbing deep into her chest before the attacker fled. Severely wounded, Liang Huimin tried to crawl to her door and knocked. Liang Huimin's mother, hearing strange noises outside, opened the door and was horrified to see her daughter lying in a pool of blood, her face pale and her breath weak. Her panicked screams echoed in the night, alarming Lui Weitian, who was waiting on the first floor. He quickly carried their daughter to the fourth floor, desperately calling out his wife's name as she was bleeding. Liang Huimin was rushed to the hospital, but due to the severity of her injuries, she passed away a few hours later, despite unsuccessful emergency treatment. As soon as the incident occurred, the police launched an investigation. Lui Weitian was immediately placed at the top of the suspect list due to the numerous conflicts between him and his wife. However, Lui Weitian had a perfect alibi. Liang Huimin was attacked on the fourth floor, while Lui Weitian was playing with their daughter on the floor below, and several people could testify to this. At Liang Huimin's funeral, Lui Weitian wept bitterly, appearing deeply grief-stricken. He told the Star newspaper that he was a terrible husband, not only failing to take good care of his wife, but also seeking out other women for business deals, to the point of squandering their savings and getting into debt. He even called himself a devil and referred to his wife as a gentle angel. Lui Weitian blamed himself, saying, "If I had brought a pen, if I hadn't let her go upstairs alone, this wouldn't have happened." Although Lui Weitian had a perfect alibi and seemed genuinely sorrowful, all the clues pointed to him as the one who stood to gain the most from this case. Not only would Huimin's assets go to him, but he would also gain custody of their daughter. Furthermore, Lui Weitian's attitude during the first police interrogation was also very peculiar. Instead of showing a willingness to cooperate in finding the culprit, he appeared resistant and uncooperative with the investigators. This was entirely contrary to the typical reaction of a loving husband, someone who would do everything possible to help the police find the person who harmed his loved one. This only increased the suspicion surrounding Lui Weitian. A few days after the incident, the police discovered a highly suspicious detail related to Lui Weitian. At the stairway where Liang Huimin was attacked, they found a small folded newspaper believed to have been used to wrap the knife, the murder weapon. The date printed on the newspaper was April 23rd. Later, when they searched Lui Weitian's home, the police discovered that his stack of newspapers had one missing. Surprisingly, the missing newspaper was also the April 23rd edition. The police immediately took the stack of newspapers from Lui Weitian's home for examination and confirmed that the newspaper found at the crime scene and the missing one from his house were the same. This indicated that even if Lui Weitian did not directly commit the murder, he could still be involved in the incident. Despite the mounting evidence against Lui Weitian, it was still not enough to convict him. The police continued to delve deeper into the case and discovered that recently Lui Weitian had been frequently associating with a group of young men. On May 18, 2001, 4 days after Liang Huimin was attacked, the police found 2 of these young men. One was Z, 15 years old, and the other was Gavin, 16 years old. Both had dropped out of school. When interrogated by the police, Z quickly succumbed to the pressure and confessed that he had killed Liang Huimin and felt regretful about it. Along with this confession, Z revealed that it was all orchestrated by Lui Weitian. With Z's clear confession, the police immediately arrested Lui Weitian on that very day. On May 19, 2001, Lui Weitian and Z were officially charged with murder. But the question arises, why did Z agree to become a murder tool for someone else? To understand why Z agreed to participate in the murder, the police conducted a deeper investigation into the relationship between this group of young men and Lui Weitian. It all began in February 2000 at a McDonald's in Pasir Ris, in the eastern part of Singapore, where Lui Weitian first met 5 young men: Z, 15 years old; Gavin, 16 years old; Vic, 17 years old; Kong Ka Chiong, 19 years old, and Siatse Hao, 22 years old. Thanks to his friendliness and maturity beyond his years, Lui Weitian quickly became a leader, or even a big brother, to this group of young men. One day, Lui Weitian suddenly challenged the group's courage, asking them if they dared to do something risky. The young men, being bold and impulsive, didn't hesitate to assert that they feared nothing. Seeing this, Lui Weitian pushed the conversation further. "If you say you're brave, would you dare to kill someone?" The young men, thinking it was just a joke, immediately competed with each other, naming different sums of money for committing murder. Someone joked that they could do it for just $76.70, while another said it would take $766.959. Finally, when Lui Weitian turned to Z, he also laughed and said that he would do it for $76,695.90. However, they didn't expect that Lui Weitian was actually serious. The person he wanted to kill was none other than his wife, Liang Huimin. First, he approached Siatse Hao, the oldest in the group. Lui Weitian suggested that he would sell his apartment to get money to pay for the murder. Realizing the seriousness of the proposal, Siatse Hao immediately refused and advised Lui Weitian to find a professional hitman if he truly wanted to do such a thing. Lui Weitian even asked Siatse Hao to find a hitman for him, but he didn't know where to look and also refused to help. Not giving up, in early May, Lui Weitian shifted his focus to Gavin. He offered Gavin $76,695.90 to kill his wife. Lui Weitian even took Gavin to his apartment, showed him a photo of Liang Huimin, and emphasized that she was weak and would be easy to kill. He instructed him to wear gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints, and after the murder, to take his wife's wallet to stage the scene as a robbery. When Gavin realized that Lui Weitian was genuinely serious about his murder plan, he understood that this was illegal and decided to back out quickly. Knowing that Z, the 15-year-old in the group, was naive and might be tricked into this, Gavin intended to call Z to warn him to stay away from Lui Weitian. Unfortunately, the call never got through. After being rejected by both Gavin and Siatse Hao, Lui Weitian still did not give up. He continued to approach the remaining 2 members of the group, Vic, 17 years old, and Kong Ka Chiong, 19 years old. At first, both still thought that Lui Weitian's words were just a joke. But after several meetings, they realized that Lui Weitian kept talking about killing his wife. Feeling that something was very strange and suspicious, both decided not to get involved. Finally, Lui Weitian indeed approached Z, the youngest. According to Gavin, Z was only 15 years old, the youngest, with a simple mind and easy to deceive. Lui Weitian described the detailed murder plan to Z, assuring him that the plan was foolproof, with no loopholes. Lui Weitian's plan included specific steps. Z would wear a helmet to conceal his face, buy a pair of gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints, and use a long, sharp knife provided by Lui Weitian to ensure lethality. He was to wear long sleeves to avoid getting scratched by the victim, not smoke at the scene to avoid leaving DNA evidence. After the murder, Z was to take the wallet and valuables to stage the scene as a robbery. When leaving, Z was to walk casually to the bus stop to avoid attracting attention, and later clean and dispose of the murder weapon. Lui Weitian insisted that as long as Z followed the plan, the police would never trace it back to him. He also promised to pay Z $1,533.92 per month for the next 4 years as a reward. After explaining the entire plan, Lui Weitian even threatened, "Actually, I am a professional hitman, and my job as a designer is just a cover. Now that you know my whole plan, if you don't participate, you'll be silenced. I've carried out countless cases, and the police haven't been able to do anything to me. Silently eliminating you wouldn't be difficult." This tactic by Lui Weitian trapped Z, who had a simple mind, into agreeing to the plan. Lui Weitian bought 2 phone cards for secret communication. After that, Z visited Lui Weitian's apartment several times for training. After many days of meticulous planning, on May 10, 2001, Lui Weitian decided it was time to act. He took Z to 923 Hugong Street, where his wife, Liang Huimin, lived. Z wore a helmet, carried the knife wrapped in a newspaper, and hid in a secluded corner. When Liang Huimin got out of a taxi, Z began to follow her up to the 4th floor. However, when she carried her daughter downstairs to the playground, Z saw her holding the child and decided to wait. After the first failed attempt, Lui Weitian, impatient, planned for the next try. Just 1 day later, on May 11th, Z followed his orders and returned to Liang Huimin's residence. In reality, Z had already wanted to quit by this time. He wanted to withdraw from the plan, but Lui Weitian called him and ordered him to continue. Holding the knife, Z wandered around the 4th floor but didn't see the target. When he went downstairs at the playground on the 1st floor, he saw Liang Huimin and her daughter playing. Seeing this, Z couldn't bring himself to do it. After 2 failed attempts, Lui Weitian became extremely angry. He confronted Z, and Z straightforwardly declared that he wanted to withdraw from the plan. Unable to accept that the plan was falling apart when it was so close to completion, Lui Weitian resorted to threats. He said, "Once you've started, there's no turning back. Whether you do it or not is no longer up to you. If you hesitate and want to back out, just wait and see what happens to your parents and siblings." These threats intimidated Z into submission. On May 14th, Lui Weitian arranged for Z to come to his house for an assassin training session. After the training, he instructed Z to be fully prepared and hide outside Liang Huimin's home. Meanwhile, Lui Weitian brought a real estate contract to find his wife. He deliberately didn't bring a pen, using this as an excuse for Liang Huimin to go upstairs to get one while he took their daughter away, leaving her alone, providing Z the opportunity to act and giving Lui Weitian a perfect alibi. This time, when Z saw Liang Huimin alone in front of the elevator on the 4th floor, he acted. He followed all of Lui Weitian's detailed instructions. After committing the crime, Z calmly walked to the bus stop, then took a taxi to the beach and threw the knife into the sea to destroy the evidence. However, after completing the task, Z felt very anxious and remorseful. He told the whole story to the remaining 4 friends in the group. On May 17, 2001, Lui Weitian contacted Z and arranged to meet at his home. More cautious than ever, Lui Weitian was afraid of leaving evidence or being tracked. Therefore, they communicated by typing on a computer. Lui Weitian wrote, "Do they know? Don't worry, I'll delete these conversations right away. I have to pretend to be very shocked because the victim is my wife. It will take some time for everything to calm down. You should understand that now is not the right time." But Lui Weitian didn't anticipate that his cleverness would become evidence against him. The police recovered the deleted documents from his computer and found clear messages from Lui Weitian. With this irrefutable evidence, the police determined that Lui Weitian was the mastermind behind it all, planning to murder his wife to take over their shared home and gain custody of their daughter. On November 19, 2001, the trial of Lui Weitian and Z took place at the Singapore High Court. Throughout the trial, Lui Weitian did not admit to the charges. He always appeared with a strange smile, showing no remorse or regret. When confronted with the evidence, Lui Weitian merely stated that his conversations with the 5 young men about eliminating his wife were just jokes. When questioned about why he brought a contract without a pen for his wife to sign, he justified it by saying he never carried a pen. As for not going upstairs with his wife and keeping their daughter, he explained that it was just a coincidence, claiming he simply wanted to spend time with his daughter. Lui Weitian firmly denied all allegations of conspiring to murder his wife and even blamed Z. He accused Z, despite being only 15 years old, of being a serious criminal and claimed that everything was Z's own doing. However, Z's friends and relatives spoke up to defend him, asserting that Z was a naive, kind-hearted teenager with compassion. If it weren't for the manipulation and coercion from Lui Weitian, Z would never have committed such a heinous act. Z also testified that he acted only under the threats and pressure from Lui Weitian, including threats against his family's lives if he did not comply. Z recounted the detailed plan laid out by Lui Weitian, from the weapon and the method of the crime to the escape route. Another critical point in the trial was the testimony from Lui Weitian's 2 former lovers, Tan Su Fen and Ho Wei Lin. They confirmed that during their relationship with Lui Weitian, they had often heard him express his desire to get rid of his wife. Ho Wei Lin, who had known Lui Weitian since 1997, said that during their 3.5-year relationship, Lui Weitian had repeatedly asked her for money, but all of it led to significant debts. She also revealed that Lui Weitian had often threatened to kill his wife if she wanted to take their daughter away, and when she asked if he was serious, Lui Weitian confirmed that he was. Similarly, Tan Su Fen, who met Lui Weitian in October 2000, also confirmed that when she was struggling and considering suicide, Lui Weitian not only did not stop her, but also suggested she help him kill his wife if she didn't want to live anymore. With the witnesses' testimonies and the physical evidence previously found, the court convicted Lui Weitian of instigating and conspiring to murder his wife. He was sentenced to death. Meanwhile, the judge considered Z to be a naive teenager who was deceived and coerced into committing the crime. Since Z was under 18 years old at the time of the crime, the court sentenced him to life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. Lui Weitian appealed but was rejected. He then filed a clemency petition to the president, hoping to have his death sentence reduced to life imprisonment, but the petition was also denied. On December 13, 2002, at the age of 35, Lui Weitian was executed by hanging at the prison. Throughout his detention and trial, he continuously denied his guilt and maintained a strange smile, which left many people feeling uneasy. As for Z, he studied hard in prison and passed several exams, not only earning a university degree but also being recognized as a model prisoner. In 2013, Z applied for clemency from the president but was denied. It wasn't until November 2017 that Z filed another clemency petition, and this time he received broad support from the media and the public in Singapore. Finally, on October 2, 2018, the president, following a recommendation from the cabinet, agreed to pardon Z and waive the remainder of his sentence. After being released from prison, Z reintegrated into society. Since Z's identity and image were always protected to ensure the privacy rights of a minor, his life post-release was not significantly affected. Liang Huimin's daughter was raised by her grandmother and later was accepted into a university. However, losing both parents at a young age is undoubtedly a deep wound and an irreparable loss that will remain with her for the rest of her life.